Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we're asking how the Powers of Terra will react to the return of a second Primarch, Lion L. Johnson. No real need for a spoiler warning today, but just keep in mind I may be referencing events from across the Warhammer 40k universe. So you have been warned, and with that said, let's just jump straight in. Although it's starting to feel like the Lion's been back for ages now, the reality is we've yet to see and find out the effect on the wider Imperium. At present, Lion L. Johnson has only been found by Dante at the end of his novel, The Lion's Son of the Forest, and he was only united with the Unforgiven at the end of the Arcs of Omen campaign. We'll surely get a little update in the upcoming Dark Angels Codex, but the real answers and details will come within the novels. That is where we'll get our real answers. How Guilliman will find out his brother is back, how their reunion will go, if the Lion will head to Terra to visit his father as he initially desired, and well, a million other things. However, the question for today I wanted to discuss is, how is Terra going to react? How are all the powers that be going to feel about another son of the Emperor returning from the dead? Because it's safe to say Guilliman's return, for all of its success, faced its fair share of opposition and caused more than a few shockwaves. At this point, it doesn't feel like L. Johnson will return to Terra, even though that was his first intent. Now he's united with the Unforgiven, it feels like he'll be stuck crusading in Imperium Nihilus. However, I really hope we do get to see him travel to Terra, for a variety of reasons. None more so than he's always been one of the most unquestioningly loyal Primarchs, and I think he deserves to get the throne room treatment like Guilliman. And I also think his reaction would be far more realistic than his brother's too, far more accepting of what the Emperor has become. Plus, how awesome would it be to see the Rock in orbit over Terra, Asriel walking within the Imperial Palace, the reaction of Asmodai to be within the vicinity of the Imperial throne room itself. Ugh, it would be fantastic to read. And anyway, it actually makes some sense for L. Johnson to return to the throne world, even for simple propaganda purposes. Just like the return of Guilliman was used to boost morale, vid captures and messages sent out of his return across the galaxy, well, so should the Lions be as well. Just think of the effect a second son of the Emperor returning could have. Guilliman's return could be seen as a miracle, a one-off glimmer of salvation, but now another Primarch. That would feel like the Emperor is surely working amongst the Imperium, protecting his people, bringing back his Primarchs in this hour of darkness. Because let's not forget, the populace of the Imperium only know of the loyal Primarchs. Knowledge of the traitors was eradicated. So the response of the people of Terra, the people of the wider Imperium, would be nothing but rejoicing. Although it's likely Lion L. Johnson is probably less widely known than the former Lord Commander and Architect of Ultramar Rabute Guilliman, I would expect surely for word of L. Johnson's return to be harnessed and maximised to its full potential. Because if it's not, it's a huge wasted opportunity by the Imperium. And I would expect the Ecclesiarchy to be the biggest proponents of it. Yes, the relationship with Guilliman has been tense at times, the worship of his father as a god, but the return of a son of the Emperor was a miracle of the Emperor. a sign of the glorious magnificence of his protection, a boost to the outpouring of faith like no other, which is only ever a good thing, especially in this time of darkness. Another loyal son returned is yet another example of the Emperor's glory, his greatness, a cause for celebration and reaffirming of faith. You would expect the ecclesiarchy to harness this to their full potential, to spread the word far and wide. Now for the other powers that be, however, well, that's where things could be a bit murky. We know Guilliman was outright feared for his wielding of Astartes' forces as a legion, in all but name. So much so he had to brutally put down and remove several High Lords from power. Even despite having done this, fear and suspicion remained throughout the command structures across the Imperium, all the way through the Imperial Navy and Militarum. There would undoubtedly be some that would be worried about another Primarch as well, especially those that know the true history of the Imperium, who view the Primarchs as responsible for the heresy, which, to be fair, they were. And that will only further be compounded when it becomes clear Lion L. Johnson is leading a legion. His legion. Because come on, that's exactly what he would do. So it most certainly isn't going to be all sunshine and rainbows. Just by his mere presence alone, L. Johnson could cause some ripples and tremors of uncertainty. How he reacts to that could be key. For the most part, I expect it will be left to Guilliman to manage, L. Johnson continuing his protection and liberation of Imperium Nihilus. But he'll surely come across it at some point, and it'll be interesting to see if he keeps his diplomatic cool, or the inner line of old rises to the surface. One of the most intriguing reactions I'm looking forward to seeing is that of the Emperor's Custodes. Trajan Valoris has been extremely supportive and welcoming of the returned Rabute Guilliman, however not to the point that he is blind to his duty, the history of the Primarchs. He assigned Tribune Colquhoun to accompany Guilliman upon the Indomitus Crusade, by far and away the most anti-Primarch custodian you could get, hugely suspicious of Guilliman and his motives. Guilliman's history within the vaults of the Imperial Palace would be fairly glorious, despite not being at the Siege of Terra. It was he and his legion that relieved the siege. It was he and his legion that prosecuted the scouring. And it was him that assumed the Lord Commander of the Imperium role from Rogel Dawn. Most likely, I'm assuming at this point by the Emperor's instruction before he was interned upon the throne. However, that remains to be seen. The Lion's history, conversely, for the Great Crusade would be great, but the heresy, fairly absent. We know this is due to the Framus Crusade against Conrad, the Ruin Storm keeping him in Ultramar, and then his campaign against the traitor homeworlds in allowing Sanguinius to reach Terra. However, if Terra has no records of that, if L. Johnson's history is largely missing, as was very much the story back in 2nd edition, and the days before we got an explanation in the Heresy series, maybe we could see a far more suspicious Custodes of L. Johnson than we have of Guilliman. A little homage and nod to the old school lore, why it was so important when the Lion uttered, "Loyalty is its own reward." Because the Imperium wouldn't know of his actions. History would doubt his loyalty. You know, I love the Lion, but I have to admit that would be a great twist. A conversation between Valoris and L. Johnson, where Valoris mentions their records being curiously absent in regards to the Lion's deeds during the heresy. A little subtle hint to his actions being questioned. However, we do know that they at least know of Guilliman's Imperium Secundus, though that hardly helps L. Johnson's case. Conversely, we do know the Emperor had implicit trust in Lionel Johnson. However, I sincerely doubt he wrote that down or it was recorded. So the Custodes' reaction to the return of Lionel Johnson could be very interesting to see. Maybe along those lines, if L. Johnson is a little more suspected by the Custodes, the Inquisition could be one to watch as well. Even more so when it's combined with the actions of the Unforgiven over the centuries. The allies they've slain, the battlefields they've abandoned, probably more than one Inquisitor that's gone missing investigating one of their chapters, and not to mention the existence of the Fallen. What an interesting little subplot that could be. A little hint or tease of an underlying monitoring by the Inquisition. Absolutely not something the Lion would stand for, but something that his reaction may make even worse. You'd think, given the state of the galaxy, surely the Inquisition would have better things to be worrying about. But I think we all know that that wouldn't be the case. And the more I think about it, the more I think we really could see a little tease and return of that original lore. That the Lion's actions weren't truly known by the current Imperium. And as a result there was rumour, speculation, that maybe he may have waited to see which side would come out the winner. Now, yes, sure, Guilliman could vouch for him, which may have weight with, say, Trajan Valoris, but at the end of the day, Guilliman's a Primarch himself. There are those that doubt him anyway, let alone the Lion, who could be far more of an unknown factor. It'll be interesting to see which way this is going to go, how much L. Johnson will return to the realities of the Imperium, and how quickly, how much his history may count for him or against. If we could see a return of older suspicions, but welcomed by the wider populace, or if he's kept across the rift as a figure of rumour and myth, or maybe even if he's seen as a counter to the overambitious Guilliman, as the Unforgiven were long teased. But as always everyone, what do you think? How do you think the Powers of Terra are going to react to the return of another Primarch? The return of Lion L. Johnson? Like me, do you think the populace of Terra and the wider Imperium will be rejoicing at another Primarch back, seeing it as a miracle of the Emperor's power? And do you agree the Ecclesiarchy will most likely be elated by this return too? Possibly even more so, with it appearing the Lion is far more accepting of the worship of their father, over the inevitable alternatives. Do you think we could see a resurgence of the older lore, of the Lion's actions in the heresy doubted by the current Imperium? For the seeming lack of evidence and record, will the Custodes doubt him, playing into that old warning of Conrad? Or do you think that will all be forgotten, and there will be no doubting of the Lion at all? He will, if anything, be just as accepted as Guilliman, or maybe even more so. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.